The Democrats who are fighting for the release of the Epstein files right now have never cared about the political party of the men who abused young girls alongside Jeffrey Epstein. That is only what we have seen from the right. They are doing everything they possibly can to defend Donald Trump and to keep the hands of Republicans and their donors clean. And so in this effort to pretend that this is all a political both sides game, they have talked about Bill Clinton. And if Bill Clinton committed any crimes alongside Jeffrey Epstein, of course, he should be held accountable. And the amount of time that he spent with Epstein is disgusting and disqualifying. And it is why what Bill Clinton just came out and said about Donald Trump is the nail in the coffin of his Epstein obfuscation, of him trying to say, look over there, here's a shiny object. It is driving Trump crazy. We are going to get into it all, but before we do, if I can quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we get into the announcement Bill Clinton just made about Trump and Epstein, sharing shocking information, I want to start with what Ro Khanna just had to say about the next steps as Trump continues to try to silence victims and cover up. Take a look.
And I'm saddened today because I was talking to the survivors. There was so much anticipation for today. They thought finally they are being seen, they're being heard, we're going to have a release. This morning, when the Deputy Attorney General went on television and said he's going to release hundreds of thousands of documents, not the whole thing, Thomas Massie and I texted each other. We said we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. We're not as concerned about having the full release. As long as they're complying with the spirit of the law, at least they're going to release something. But then we saw the documents filled with blanket redactions. Documents that judges had ordered to be released, they had blanked out. There's no draft indictment there that actually has the names of other men who may be implicated in the abuse. There's not the prosecution's original memo that we wanted to see released. There are none of the files on Epstein's computer. And we do not know then who these other rich and powerful men were who abused these survivors. And we know from the survivors and the survivors' lawyers that that information is in the files. So this is deeply disappointing. They have not complied with the law, and we're going to continue to fight to make sure they do.
Your first reflex in many situations like this is to give them some grace because it's a lot. However, we also know for months and months and months and months and months and months and months, they have resisted releasing. So my question to you on your point about, you don't trust what you've seen so far, and Caitlin's reporting, this is what she does for a living. She understands the documents. Imagine if you did have too much and you didn't have the staff to do it all. Right? You said the spirit of the law. Those witness statements Caitlin talked about. Memos, why didn't you indict Jeffrey Epstein? Or when you did bring charges, why did you bring this, not that? My point is, if you were going to say we can't do it all right away, don't you think they could have had a conversation with you about what's most important? Or just know they should be pretty good lawyers, know what's most important to get out in public?
John, they could have had a conversation with me and Thomas Massie, but if they didn't feel like they owed us that conversation, they should have at least had a conversation with the survivors or the survivors' lawyers and listen to what they know are in those files. If they had just released the prosecution memo, which was prepared for the Florida trial, an 80-page document, and the draft indictment, we would have a lot more information about who was part of this abuse and how Epstein made his money. If they just released some of the files on the computers, we'd have a lot more information. And that's what Massie and I said, look, they should have done this months ago. We understand it was rushed. We weren't there saying in the morning, okay, just because they're not releasing everything, we're going to go after them. We thought, okay, they're complying with the date. Let's see what they do. But when it came out that we have no new information about the rich and powerful men who abused these young girls and who should be held accountable, we have no information about who these people are who were engaged in the cover-up, that's when we drew the line. And you know what? The survivors, I just talked to some of them today. They're ready to come back.
These survivors demand justice. They deserve to know their own stories. They have been so traumatized by Epstein and Trump and the men who abused those young girls that they can't even remember what happened to them. That is devastating. That is heartbreaking. And for that not to compel any level of empathy or action out of the Republicans who continue to stand in the way, who are breaking the law right now alongside Pam Bondi, alongside Todd Blanche, alongside Kash Patel. It is humiliating. It is illegal. It is gross. And it's why they keep talking about Bill Clinton. They think that they can make this a political football and pretend that Democrats are just doing this for theater, for show, instead of the truth that we actually care about justice, that we want transparency, that this isn't about Donald Trump. Donald Trump has made it about Donald Trump, but he wants to make it about Bill Clinton. But Bill Clinton just put the nail in the coffin of that attempt to change the subject with what he had to announce right here. From Midas Touch News, former President Bill Clinton is demanding full transparency from the Trump DOJ on the Epstein files. Clinton's spokesperson says the DOJ selective release suggests someone is being protected. We need no such protection, he writes. He calls on Trump to direct AG Pam Bondi to immediately release all remaining materials referencing Clinton, including grand jury records and photos. The argument from the right this entire time has been, oh, wait until the liberals freak out over Bill Clinton and Bill Gates and Larry Summers, like we care about any of these people. We want transparency and we want accountability. And Bill Clinton coming out and saying what he should have said a long time ago, and again, it just continues to disgust me that we have allowed this man who had such clear ties to Epstein, and we've known this for so long, to continue to be platformed in the party. Like, you can disagree with that, but the fact that we were talking about Epstein during this past election and Bill Clinton still spoke at the DNC, that we still sent him out to campaign, is an incredible lack of judgment. It's just not right, and Bill Clinton should not be someone that we put up as a face of the Democratic Party. You can think that he did a great job as president, talk about his accomplishments, but Bill Clinton does not need to be involved in the Democratic Party. And I don't think anyone is having their heart broken by that being called out. Let's be real, y'all. I was a little disappointed, honestly. I'm just going to come out and say it. And some people I saw go to the Clinton Global Summit and talk to Bill Clinton amid a lot of conversation about Epstein this summer. I was just a little shocked. This is not a guy that we should have in our party. But Democrats are saying that. We're all saying that. Bill Clinton, the subtext of that is, yeah, I get it. I understand. And he's right. We need transparency. So what's Donald Trump's argument now? How are Democrats getting in the way to protect Democrats? The Democrat mentioned most of all the public-facing Democrats in the Epstein files, as we can tell from this point, just said release them all. So how are we blocking it? How are we We're not. That's what's happening. We're not. The cover-up is not a both sides, right? It's not everyone's corrupt. It's Donald Trump. He has the power to do it. He is not. This is a cover-up, and it needs to be continued to called out for what it is, an illegal cover-up. They're breaking the law every single day, every single hour, every single second. That's what Jamie Raskin had to say right here.
Congressman, thank you so much for being with us this morning. It's
bet.
great to see you. Is this a cover-up?
Well, sure. I mean, if you read the statute, the only things they're allowed to be redacting are related to child sex abuse, physical abuse, ongoing investigations, which they say there are none, and national security. So how can you block out an entire document? It makes no sense. And remember, Trump opposed the legislation up until the very end when he could read the writing on the wall. Then he said, oh, I'm for it. They decided they're just going to try to obstruct the implementation of the legislation. So that's the fight that we're in now.
Do you think the 30-day time frame for release of these documents was realistic?
Well, yeah, given that they came to us back in July and said they'd been through all the documents and they couldn't find any basis for bringing any other lawsuits. They'd already scrutinized them.
What of this do you think falls into the category of protecting victims, and what falls into the category of cover-up? Because obviously there is a very strong interest in making sure the victims are protected.
Yeah, I'd say probably 0 and 100. They've not shown any deference or respect for the victims at all, for the survivors of this nightmare. And it's all about covering up things that, for whatever reason, Donald Trump doesn't want to go public, either about himself, other members of his family, friends, Jeffrey Epstein, or just the social, business, cultural network that he was involved in for at least a decade, if not longer.
So do you think this actions that the Department of Justice are taking on this are specifically designed to protect Donald Trump?
Well, what else? I mean, that's their whole business model. In fact, they're trying to reorganize American constitutional jurisprudence and the rule of law around the idea that the entire executive branch serves one guy. That's the unitary executive theory, that this is all about serving whatever Donald Trump wants. So yeah, I can't imagine what other interests they have in mind.
One of the things we did see were a number of pictures of former President Bill Clinton with Jeffrey Epstein, with Ghislaine Maxwell in a jacuzzi, swimming in a pool. How do you explain that connection, and are you comfortable with it?
I mean, I have no idea. This is why we want to get to the bottom of it and get all of the facts out to, to the public. I mean, that's what this is about. And, look, there are clearly lots of people that are in photographs with Jeffrey Epstein, and in addition to being a child sex predator and an international child sex abuse trafficker, he was very much of a socialite and a sycophant and a panderer to different people. So there's lots of people who've appeared in those contexts, and we shouldn't be covering up for anybody if they were actually involved in criminality. And otherwise, it's embarrassing to people, but the Congress has said we don't want the suppression of materials simply because somebody may be embarrassed. I mean, Bill Clinton has appeared along with Donald Trump, along with Noam Chomsky, and other people from different aspects of our society. But what we're looking at is how did a global, decades-long, billion-dollar sex ring go undetected and unpoliced for such a long period of time? This is about a double system of justice. Remember, he was convicted back in 2008, but that didn't stop him from going forward and continuing to run the whole network.
I mean, Republicans would probably sit here and say, well, why didn't you do this when Joe Biden was president of the United States, when you had the power?
Well, if they ask me personally, I can produce for you, as I've produced for them, a number of letters I wrote, including a hearing I did as a subcommittee chair on the Oversight Committee about Alex Acosta and the double system of government that we saw back in Florida. Remember, there was a 60-count federal indictment ready to go on this international child sex trafficking ring with all kinds of counts, including the money laundering, the conspiracy, the prostitution, and so on. And Alex Acosta cast the whole thing overboard and came back with one state count of solicitation in Florida to benefit Epstein and his friends. And there was really a cover-up of other people who were involved.